Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another episode of The Full-Time Investor. I am Mandy Brenham, solutions-driven property management, solutions-driven asset acquisitions. You know what? I'm just solutions-driven in general. So I'm back in my home studio, back from my training session last week in Houston, and I'm super excited to be sitting here today with my guest, Luc Boiron. Luc, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for being here with me today. So if you've not heard of Luc, you will know Luc by the end of the show for sure. Luc is a passionate real estate entrepreneur. He started investing in 2000. Sorry, I don't have this open. He started investing in 2007. He was a lawyer prior to starting to his investing. He has flipped properties. He holds properties. He's an Airbnb expert, and he's certainly a pronounced wholesaler in the GTA, reaching out to the Ottawa area, to all of my Ottawa people watching on the show. And like we kind of discussed, the possibility that you're the Canada's largest wholesaler until somebody else steps up and tells you different, right?
Right now, I don't know of anyone bigger.
Well, awesome then. You wear that hat as long as you can, that's for sure. So wholesaling is a unicorn to many people, not quite understanding the where to start, how it works, why a seller would do this. I want people to kind of feel your journey, Luc, from where you were and how you got started, and to how you have acquired 50 properties, acquired or wholesaled, sold, bought 50 properties in the last 5 months. So tell us a little bit about Luc and your investing journey year to date.
Okay. Well, so it's me starting off was when I was in school, 2007, I was in my undergrad, bought my first rental property. I always thought, I'll become a lawyer. I can use that income to buy rental properties to qualify for the financing. But really my passion was always real estate. So I went through law school, did my MBA, had a few rentals here and there that I had bought and sold over that time. And I'd grown up with a father who's a commercial real estate agent. So I kind of was familiar with a little bit of real estate. And so when I finished law school, I decided I had to article, but I didn't want to stay in law. I finished my article and got called to the bar, and I started flipping houses full time because I thought it's what I had to do to make it a full-time job rather than having to work in something I wasn't passionate about and do it on the side and do real estate on the side. So I went into flipping houses full time. I bought my first several houses off the MLS. Opportunistically finding things that other people had missed and renovating the properties. I think my first full year of flipping houses, I bought about 17 and renovated them. So there was really just me with an assistant here and there a little bit, but a huge amount of time. But even just getting into it, when I bought my first rental, I had to renovate it. I hired a contractor and worked side by side with him to learn what he was doing, and I was able to finish it myself, save money on that. And I ended up working for him, renovating basement apartments for a few summers during the time I was in school. So I learned a lot about construction, and that made me a lot more comfortable getting into, both from having owned rental properties and from having done the renovations, made me more comfortable getting into trying to flip houses.
Okay. So there you are, you flipped. So you were overseeing those 17 projects, certainly not you doing all of the renovations. How were you able to manage a team?
Yeah, that was hard. So it was actually, I have a little bit of a tendency to want to get into it. And I think I'm mostly over that now. I used to want to get into the renovations fully. So one of my first investors was one of my brothers, and he put up some of the money for me to start flipping. And he said, I don't want you to do any of the renovations. In fact, you have a truck now that's on its last legs. When you replace that, you'd have to get a sedan. You can't have a truck anymore, so you can't, pick up materials. You can't do all of that. So I was still picking up materials. I had a Sonata, and I was throwing tiles in the trunk, and I was, almost touching the wheel wells. But I trust my brother, and I agreed with him. I knew it was something I had to do. So I really did hire contractors for pretty much everything. and then I would oversee. And starting out on the flips, I would pick up all of the finished material, deliver them to the job site, be there almost daily on most of the jobs, making sure it was cleaning. When it was done, I'd send in a cleaner. It wasn't good enough. I'd pull off the windows and clean everything myself and really get in there. But yeah, I mean, it was difficult doing so many renos. I had a lot of contractor problems. I had a few good crews and a few bad crews. So I kind of had general contractors managing them. And then certain things that don't take as much like time, like kitchen countertops or installing kitchen cabinets, I would have sub-trades for those things: windows, roof, kitchen cabinets, kitchen countertops, tiling. I would have sub-trades for those things. And then I'd have kind of a general contractor who didn't directly manage those sub-trades, but they would run the rest of the job site. They'd do the painting, the drywalling, unless we had to drywall a whole house, the door.
You saw really early on that did you calculate profit margin at the end of a job, and then you just thought, okay, here, I should show people profit margin at the end of the job, and then you think, if I do the work, my profit margin could be larger, or if I hire trades, this is the end profit margin. So you were able to factor in how you got paid, or just what does it make sense to buy a property for and flip it? Because I think you were the wise one that told me one time, and it's resonated on a couple of my guests, so I can really see the mindset of the growth. But some jobs you make money, some jobs you break even, and some jobs you lose money.
Yeah, I think for me at least, the that kind of the amount you're talking about here, I was looking at it as I could make $100,000 on a flip and spend 6 months in there in the weeds, man, renovating it, or I could make $50,000 and do 5 of them and not be in the weeds. So that was my mindset, where I'd rather do a little bit more volume. And I also often saw the contractor flippers, as I call them, people who they flip houses because they're a contractor. And they often pay too much for the house. And then when they're done renovating it, the profit they make is about what they would have charged as a contractor.
Yeah.
Or not much more. So then you look at it and you go, well, if I had paid a contractor that, there wasn't really profit on the flip. So it's not a profitable flip. I'm working as a contractor.
Right.
And I didn't want to make myself a job as a contractor. I wanted to be making profitable flips.
Right. Right. Go back to your brother being really supportive of you. What was the insight that he saw that he was leading you in a direction that you might not have had the clarity to be able to see in that moment?
So I'm lucky to come from a big family. My parents had 6 kids. All my siblings are very intelligent. My brother's a lawyer. Now he's a partner at a national firm in the US. So he was in California, and he was into real estate a lot because my father was. And he was listening to podcasts in the US, and he was seeing what they were doing, the Americans were doing. And he was going, there's this guy down here who does 100 houses a year. And I'm like, how would someone buy 100 houses a year? No way. But just, there was a little bit of that mindset that there's ways to do more volume. And I was thinking too small. And he would remind me that I was thinking too small.
Okay.
And I think he really pushed me a lot to get started in growing. And
absolutely. And I think sometimes, right, we start to think, how many hours in a day do I have? And then you encourage your spouse to come on, and then you're like, well, between the two of us, we now have more hours. But it's the genius is to be able to say, how do we bring on a contractor and remove us out of that? And I still have all of my 24 hours, except maybe minus a couple, because I'm out looking for the next job and the next job and the next job. So wholesale lean. Wholesaling. Yes. Well, Larry, yes. I don't know, of course, I need to thank my producer in the background here. If you could put up the term wholesale, Luc, why don't you explain it to people in layman's terms so that every investor from start to finish will understand what a wholesale deal is?
Okay. So basically, the wholesale deal is I go to the producer of this show and I say, why don't you sell me your house? Here's a piece of paper. This is a contract. Let's sign that you're going to sell me your house. It's worth $150,000 now, but you're just tired of dealing with this property. Sell it to me for $100,000. Okay. Now I have a $150,000 house in Midland And I go to Mandy and I say, hey, Mandy, I have a $150,000 house in Midland. Will you pay me $110,000 for it? You say, well, yes, I buy houses in Midland. $110,000 for a $150,000 house sounds great.
Okay.
And so now we sign another piece of paper, just sign it up, and it now says you're going to buy the house for me for $110,000. And what we do here is I don't actually close on the property. So I assign the first contract to you, and you close on it with the producer. So I'm basically just selling the paper to you.
Okay.
And stepping out of the way, letting you two close the deal, and I make the difference in the fee. So in that case, I would have made a $10,000 assignment fee. That's what I do. I assign the contract. I would have made a $10,000 assignment fee for finding the producer who wants to sell his house because he doesn't want to deal with it anymore, and selling that house still at a discount to the investor who wants a house in that area.
So tell us about more of these producers. Why and how, what are some of the situations, just to be able to get people into the mindset of who are these people who are done with their properties? What do you mean done?
Yeah. So some of our sellers, it's a little bit of a convenience thing. Thinking of a house we bought recently in Ottawa, they're in their 80s. They, when my acquisition rep was there, you're saying, oh, are you sure you don't want to sell it on the MLS? Your house is in great shape. You list it with an agent, they'll have people come through. And she's like, oh, no, I don't want people coming through my house. I don't want to have to worry about that. And we want to know it's sold so we can know for sure to go and choose our next place.
Okay.
So it was just the comfort thing for her.
Yeah.
Another one, this was also in Ottawa. This is the worst house we ever bought. They didn't have running water for 5 years. These were the type of people who bury their head in the sand when something goes wrong. So no running water in the house for 5 years, a bathtub full of urine and things like that. The house was just disgusting. They were hoarders as well. And because they bury their head in the sand when something goes wrong, they called us when they were about 10 days away from being evicted by the bank. Like they'd gotten the letter from the sheriff. They were going to be kicked to the street and they didn't have any money for somewhere else. They had equity in the house. So they called us up and they said, hey, we're going to lose the house in 10 days. Anything you can do? So we went out, we bought it, and we closed it in 5 business days.
So what kind of discount, just to, again, you can use some different numbers if you want, but just give us an idea of what the value of this in the Midland property. You had bought $150,000 for $100,000. What was that? What's the convenience factor?
In that case, that might have been realistic, $150,000 for $100,000. That's not necessarily the percentage, but there has to be a minimum amount to make it worthwhile to do a deal. Yeah. Because if I have to close on it, I'm going to have the cost of realtor to resell it. I'm going to have the private financing costs. I'm going to have all of the transaction costs to do that. So
let's go right there for a minute. Okay. So you are buying this contract. Here it is. You have that contract for that property that you bought from the producer in Midland. There is a possibility that you can't connect with a Mandy.
Yes.
So so in your mind, as you go and negotiate all these contracts, tell us about your backup plans, your options for getting this property under contract. Yeah.
So the first thing is we go in, we view a lot of properties. So we go in with a conditional offer. We call it partner approval. It's conditional on partner approval. And after we tie up the property, then we look into it in more detail and just make sure that it is what we think it is. And so if it is that example of that type of property, then we would try to sell it. Now, let's say I don't know many buyers who buy in Midland. I would go to Mandy. Maybe Mandy is buying in Hamilton right now and doesn't feel like it. And I don't have other buyers there. Well, there are buyers who are buying on the MLS. So in that case, it's a good enough deal. I would close on it myself. I might use private funds, especially if it was a higher price. I would use private financing. I would close on it. I would clean it out because a lot of times properties look much worse, just full of junk. So I would empty the junk, have the house cleaned, and then I would list it on the MLS for sale.
Okay.
And that's usually the next option. And occasionally where I really see a great spread, I don't do much of this anymore, the actual full house renovations, but where the spread really makes sense, then I'll send out a crew of contractors and do a full, beautiful renovation of the house and sell it on the MLS to the end buyer.
Okay. How do people buy your houses? How do you find more Mandys in Midland and in Hamilton and in Ottawa?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, it's just building my buyers list, as I call it. If you go to any of my websites, like blissrealtyinvestors.com/buyers or cashhousebuyer.ca/buyers, you can go get you can sign up for my buyers list. And all that is when I get a property in that area, I would send it an email blast to everyone I have on my list. And we'll get it. For me, it's going to networking events. But I also do some advertising for it. I don't know if you've ever seen some of my Facebook ads for my buyers list.
Oh.
No? Okay. Well, I have ran some Facebook ads for my buyers list. Similar picture actually to the one with the wrench on my shoulder.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people hating on it, especially realtors. It's discounted properties. If it was discounted, why would you sell it discounted? You just sell it on the MLS. Well, one of the reasons I don't sell it on the MLS is to transfer the property much faster, like velocity of money, but also because I'm going to have expensive private financing. I'm going to have land transfer tax. I'm going to have realtor commissions. I'm going to have the legal fees. It's going to cost me a lot of money just to close on it and sell it to another investor.
Right.
So sell it to that investor directly. That's what most of what I do is.
Yeah. Yeah. So now you are Luc. You did 50 deals in 5 months. What if I'm just starting out and I am looking for one property to flip because I haven't quite gotten into that mindset of growth yet? Is it worth somebody doing this small? What did you do when you started out? And then how can you eventually grow into being able to find more deals?
Yeah, I think the wholesaling aspect is very difficult because you have to understand what your buyers are going to want. So you have to understand a lot of different aspects of real estate investing, the rentals, the flipping, like all the different strategies that go into it and why someone will want to buy it from you. And that'll kind of justify your position on what you can pay for it. So if you're going in really looking for a property just for yourself, the MLS, there are still deals out there. I mean, a few of my first deals, one I bought because it was listed wrong on Thanksgiving weekend. It didn't make it to the TREB board until the following Tuesday. By then I'd already bought it, but it was on the public MLS. Another one was listed as a 3-bedroom house, but still technically a 4-bedroom. They'd just taken down a wall between 2 bedrooms. And I knew the 4 bedrooms sold for more in the area. So if you get to know an area or the types of houses you're looking at, you can find exceptions and get some deals on the MLS. So if you're looking for one deal, you're probably better off in the MLS or trying to get on a wholesaler's buyers list than buying one of those for one flip. The other thing too is you might want to try more guerrilla tactics if you're really looking in like one neighborhood. Like, hey, I live in, I don't know what. Let's say someone lives in Forest Hill and Forest Hill is a bad example. Someone lives in a certain neighborhood and they want to buy
the beaches in Toronto.
Sure, the beaches, and they want to buy one house in the beaches as a rental. So they have a very specific criteria. Now you can look on the MLS, or you can try to do a little bit more guerrilla. You can go door knocking. You can talk to people and see if they have something to sell. That's when you're really looking for one property and you care a lot about a specific area. So you're not doing like a big, broad kind of marketing campaign. So for a little bit of what I'm doing on marketing, August, my cost per contract was just on the marketing was almost $5,000 per contract, and we bought about 10. So I spent about $50,000 just in marketing in August. To do the volume I'm doing, I currently have 12 employees to do 10 houses a month with a substantial marketing budget and obviously salaries and overhead on top.
What was your marketing budget last August?
Probably 2,000.
2,000 in acquisition.
2,000 in direct marketing costs. So we're doing, we're doing very high volume of marketing to get the word out to people who might not know that they have an alternative to realtors, that they have an option to not sell, to not show their neighbors that they live as a hoarder. People don't necessarily know where to go in that situation. And you were asking earlier about different reasons. Another one.
Yes, give me some more stories.
Yeah, so hoarders, obviously, people get embarrassed. So when we walk through a house and they let their dog use the inside as a bathroom. They don't want other people seeing their house. Hoarders, they don't want other people seeing their house. Another one we had, they were, divorce is common. This was boyfriend and girlfriend, broke up. The ex-girlfriend had moved out. The ex-boyfriend still lived there. Ex-girlfriend has a new boyfriend and wants nothing to do with the ex-boyfriend anymore, but they're both on title. She really wants this house gone as soon as possible. Her new boyfriend really wants that house gone as soon as possible. They don't want any ties with the ex-boyfriend anymore. So call us saying, hey, please buy the house. Get rid of this guy. I just don't want him in our life. And I'll convince him to sell, just make it a reasonable price for us. And we came to an agreement. Divorce is a common situation. So what I look for is basically where deals typically work out is there's seller distress or property distress. A combination of the two is going to get you likely your best deals, but either one of those. So property may be in great shape, but the seller, owes the CRA a lot of money and is, I don't know, facing big problems. They want to sell quickly. Even if the property's in great shape, that's seller distress, and that could be a motivation for them to sell to you. On the other side, obviously, property distress, they don't have the money to fix the roof, and the roof has a big hole in it and it's been raining into the house. You see those situations. So that's the property distress, and you want to get that taken care of.
Yeah, because these people obviously don't have the funds to just be able to fix the roof. So there's the seller distress. I really like that description. You got seller distress and property distress. Do you find a lot, you said the one in Ottawa was like 10 days before foreclosure, so that people are in quite denial that it's really not going to come this way. I've owned this property for 10 years, 20 years. They really can't take it.
Yeah, I don't know about a lot, but I bought several like that. We had another one in Guelph that was a similar situation. They had a letter from the sheriff. They said, we need to close pretty quickly. I think they were about a month out from, they knew they were going to lose it. And I think shortly after they sold to us, they got the sheriff letter that gave them about 3 weeks. But we had already agreed on like a 2-week closing. So yeah, it's pretty common that a lot of these people would be better served if they sold it on the MLS. But the problem is they bury their head in the sand and they wait until there's no more time to sell it on the MLS. And they don't really have a choice, either that, or they don't have the money to rent another place. They have equity in their house, but the bank's going to take it and not give them any money to go anywhere else until it's finally sold, maybe 6 months or a year later, and the bank's through its whole power of sale process. So the seller in Ottawa would have gotten money from the bank, probably because there was equity, but they wouldn't have gotten it for a long time, and they would have been homeless.
Right.
Homeless. They did not have the money to go somewhere else.
There's also times that, as much as it's a rush situation, maybe this is somebody else that I heard this from, but there's that you will pay them some money to be able to help them transition potentially before the transaction closes. So tell me about some of the ways that you talk to these sellers. How do you relate to them? How do you be able to, like if I walked around a house with dog poop, I think I'd be out the front door just as quick as I walked in. I have been in maybe a couple hoarder houses, but it wasn't fun. So how do you do that?
It's trying not to judge the sellers. It's understanding people get in bad situations. The ones in Ottawa who are hoarders, the situation was bad. It was worse because there were children in the house, but the
main problems.
Yeah, the main breadwinner in a house had severe depression, and it was a really rough time in his life. And we try not to be judgmental, and that's what people are scared of. And we try to offer alternative solutions to sellers, and that's sometimes some sellers don't care. They just, traditional sale is fine with them, but certain ones, like you said, on one house we did in Georgetown, we've done this kind of type of thing a few times. We gave the seller a mortgage, so they owned the house free and clear. They'd owned it since the 60s, and they needed money to go buy another house. They didn't have the money for a down payment or even the deposit, really. So we gave them a mortgage on the house of $42,000 interest-free until we closed 2 months later. So now they took $42,000 and they could go use that as a deposit to buy a house, use it for moving costs and things like that. And that was able to help them. We just sent a check for $4,000 to a seller we have in Cambridge who's selling his house to us. He needed first and last for another place. So we agreed to this is not secured. The $42,000, just the mortgage thing is a little bit confusing, but it was usually when you give a seller a deposit, they don't actually get to use the money. It's held by their lawyer in trust. In this case, we had it released from their lawyer to them because we registered the mortgage to secure our interest. So this other seller with the $4,000, we cut them a check directly. I feel comfortable enough with that seller. They're going to use that money for first and last to go and move to another place. Other options like that one in Ottawa, I said we closed in 5 business days. We told them we close in 5 business days. They can stay in the house for another 30 days until they find another house.
Okay.
So and I've done like rent back.
They had their cash. The lawyer had released all their cash. They had some money to be like, wow, okay, let's go and change this issue. The mental shift rate in that right there could have been enough to be able to get that guy out of a bit of a slump that he might have been in.
Absolutely, because even if we had said, yeah, it's great, we can close in 5 days, you won't be kicked out by the bank. Well, they were going to be kicked out by us. That's
Right.
not going to help them, because even if it's the day they get the money, they're not going to have another place to go to. So it actually took them longer than the 30 days. We had a holdback of a few $1,000s, just to make sure they were going to leave. And so they stayed a little longer, but they found a rental. They have running water. The kids have their own bedrooms. It's a much better situation for them, and they seem much happier. So hopefully they'll be able to get their life back on track there. But yeah, just giving them that time to find another place, and now they have the money to do it, was a much better situation for them.
Wow.
Other options is we give seller the option to leave their junk behind.
Yes.
If the price is right. If they're squeezing us on the price, they have to clean out the house.
Right.
But if the price is right, leave the house full of junk. We'll take care of it.
So are you ever afraid of a property? Like, I mean, I take my producer, Mr. Larry, through some of these properties, and there's some stuff that's going on with bowed foundations. Like, there was a garage where the roof had fallen in 15 years ago. There was like a paradise, like it was a garden in the garage. Like, there was scary stuff that we see. What do you do to filter some of those things that you're going to see, or how you're going to repair them, or cost factors to be able to offer to your end buyer? Yeah,
so one of the tricky factors of that is because I don't go see the houses myself anymore. I have acquisition reps who go see it, so they don't have as much construction experience as I do. So it would worry them even more. But obviously for me too, I'm not always certain. So what we try to do is, the bigger the problem, the lower our price.
Okay.
There's pretty much the right price for every property.
Right.
An example, we bought one in Brantford recently, where it was a century home with the old brick, like basement foundation walls, like I guess double layer brick. That's the basement under the dirt, the walls, right?
Oh.
Well, that had fallen into the basement. There was about 23 feet combined in two different sections of the foundation outside wall in the basement, with nothing supporting the perimeter for part of the house. So the house almost collapsed. Rain would just run right into the basement. Really, really bad. And then I got a quote from, we got it under contract at a lower price. And then I got a quote from a foundation repair company that I know in the area. And I think it's going to cost me about $17,000 for them to clean it out, to pour a new foundation with a lifetime warranty and replace that. So we signed it up. That same week, I got them in to put up a temporary support, and it's going to cost me $17,000 to $20,000 between the engineers, the permits, and the pouring the foundation with the waterproofing. And I think we're doing an internal waterproofing with the sump pump. So and lifetime warranty that it's not going to collapse again.
So anything can be repaired. It's just a matter of you being resourceful to be able to find out how much it's going to be repaired for. But then to clarify on something like that, so you must have some pretty good private financing going on, because a bank would not touch something like that. Am I correct?
Absolutely, you're correct. There's no way a bank would touch that. Yeah, this was actually I financed this. So I currently own this property. I financed this off of a long-term promissory note rather than even securing it directly on the property.
Yep.
So this is just funds I borrowed that I use kind of to roll into properties here and there. Yep. But generally, certain private lenders would be okay with it, certain wouldn't. There's enough of a discount. There's enough value there that someone could probably tear this house down for the price I bought it for, because it was so bad, and it was already a century home that needed a renovation. So someone probably could have torn this house down, built a new one, and made money at the price I bought it for. So it's not the end of the world if it got worse. But also, I got the temporary support in before I owned it. That was important to me. Yeah, it was definitely. The owner had done nothing. I think there was one 2x4 kind of stuck under some of the joists that were sagging heavily. So I had the foundation company in, go do the temporary support. They support it. Now I'm comfortable that the house is not going to collapse as soon as I own it.
Right.
And so that was fine.
What are some of the other factors that that banks really don't like that you have found and come across?
So unfortunately, if the appraisal comes back with the condition not saying above average or something, like if the condition just says average, often the banks won't even lend on that. I found. I don't use banks as often, but I think I believe one of the deals where the financing fell through with a traditional bank was the appraisal said the property condition was maybe below average or something like that. It didn't say it was like terrible. It said something like below average. And the bank said, no, we won't finance this.
Yeah. You say that brings up a story. I had a property in Barrie and the appraisal came back and the mortgage, it was not financeable. So I called up my banker and I was like, I think the appraiser went to the wrong property. I have a home inspection. I have 2 contractors that have gone through. I have 2 agents, bona fide agents that are selling this property. This is not in as-is condition. Like, I'm not getting a discount here. So anyways, I pushed it enough and they went back to the underwriter and we got 50% loan to value for the time that we had it. But there was nothing wrong with this property. Now I have had holdbacks to be able to say, okay, we'll finance 50% until I think one of our co-investors, he had a foundation like a concern. I've had appraisers that are not in home inspectors, like, and they're saying things like, I see a crack in the foundation. So there's a big red flag on the deal, and we had a foundation guy go out and be able to say, like, this is a class A crack. It happens in every house. There's no concern with it. And so they've removed it off, but that's how much an appraiser can potentially get involved in some of these.
Yeah, usually the appraisals come in on the privates. They understand it's for a private. There's obviously issues with the house, but the point is that the value is there.
Yeah.
And usually you're putting down 20 or 25%, and that's the equity that the private lender is comfortable with. Not to mention the private lender really hits you on the fees. Like, I run my numbers in my spreadsheet paying a 3% fee and 9% interest per year.
Okay.
So a 3% fee up front just to get the financing.
So one quick thing, because I can hear my producer coming to tell me, Mr. Larry, is you have one of your siblings that is a real estate agent.
Yes.
When you talk about comps, how can the average person who doesn't have a sibling, or how do I build a relationship, or where do I get that specific information on comps and prices and whatever to this rundown hoarder house?
Absolutely. So part of that is when I work in a new area, because I am kind of all over Ontario, and my brother and his assistant help in Toronto and the GTA. We have other agents help us in different areas. So what we'll do is, if we end up wholesaling a house in that area, we'll end up paying the agent something, and we'll let them know ahead of time. If they're helpful to us, we will pay them something for helping us on the deal. And then other times it's having that loyalty with them. If they're helping us, get the deal or making sure the comps are right, we're going to be listing it with them when we sell it. If we decide to list it as is and sell it on the MLS or do the flip. So I think there's a little bit of a need for finding a good agent. And then having loyalty to that agent. And that doesn't mean you can only use one agent, but I would say in one area, try to be loyal to one agent. And when you do manage to get a property, make sure they get paid on it. And if you have them help you a lot, it might be worth paying them a little bit just for their time to have helped you, even if you haven't yet gotten a deal in that area, because a good agent is an important part of your team. And sometimes, I'm not talking about paying them tens of thousands of dollars. If you pay them $500 because you've been trying for a few months and they've sent you comps several times and it just hasn't worked out, say, look, I know because agents will get discouraged when they don't see a deal coming together. They don't see any way that they're going to make money from you. They're going to get discouraged. So send them $500 and say, look, I'm still working. I'm going to find properties here. And when I do, you're going to list them. But I want to show you I'm serious. Like, here's $500 or $1,000 or a gift card or something to show that I'm serious. I'm spending money here and you're not just wasting your time on me.
Yeah. Okay. One more thing, because I do find this whole wholesaling thing fascinating. Is how many properties do you find compared to how many you're able to actually get at a discounted, appropriate for you type of price?
Yeah, so we do
numbers.
We do a lot of outbound marketing, and we probably need about 50 to 100 inbound leads, like sellers contact us in order to buy one.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're talking to a lot of people who are like, hey, I just like to sell privately, and they're not that, they're not a motivated seller, and they don't have a property motivation. Yeah,
the problem with the marketing is a lot of people contact us when they're listed on the MLS and it just hasn't been selling, and they still want full MLS value. They're just curious about what we do. So
right. Okay.
We'll take 100 calls, 50 to 100 calls to buy one house. Maybe So let's say we take 50 calls, go on 5 appointments, buy 1 house.
Okay, so for my newbies out there who are looking for their first property, they want to be able to get it discounted. We're kind of guiding them to be able to say, hey, start with the MLS and look for those gems that nobody's seen, or buy on a long weekend when maybe it's misadvertised, or what's missing. And if they are going to go this way, kind of be ready to be able to have a lot of conversations that might not end where they with a sale at the very end.
Absolutely.
And on your buyers list, so you can just buy from Luc for the discounted properties.
Exactly. Yeah, that's something I see all the time from newer people. They get one seller lead and they get very involved and spend a lot of time on it. And that one seller lead has a very low chance of turning into a deal.
I agree. I find that with people, they're like, these are going to be great joint venture partners. I'm like, they're not even convinced they want real estate yet. So don't put overly too much time and effort into this. But you know what, Luc, thank you. Thank you for talking about this unicorn of wholesaling. I think it's a great way. I advise people who are new investors who say, I don't have any money, but how do I get into the real estate game? I look at you as one of the most educated people when it comes to markets, comparables, property values, who's looking, how do I get rid of this deal? So I think it's a great way for people to potentially transition into buying a property. Although I do share that it is a lot of work. So thank you for the time, the dedication that you put into finding all these deals.
Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in another week for an episode of The Full-Time Investor. Please like or share this video. Let me know what your thoughts are, and I'd love to see you connected on other Facebook pages or my Instagram at JVQueen. Have a good week, everybody.